Okay, we're going to now do a part 2 on this while loop introduction, and so we want to make sure we get some while loop terminology down. So there's 5 parts. You can say there's 3 parts plus 2 braces. So if you're asked what are the 5 parts of a definite loop, it'd be these 5 things. If we said, well, what are the 3 parts of a definite while loop, we would say these 3 things. And so the first thing you've got to have is what's called a loop control variable. And so you have loop control, so make sure you label this variable, and it is initialized. And if you remember, that means that it has been declared and assigned. Alright, so it's been declared count, and it's an int, and it's an assigned 1. Now this is a loop control variable. And so what does that mean? It means it's a variable that controls the loop. This variable, a variable that controls the loop. And if you remember, what happened was this count variable started out at 1, and if it made this Boolean expression true, it controlled the loop by saying now go into the loop, and then it became true, and then which is still true, so it's controlling it. It's saying okay, let's go again. So it's having control. Eventually it gets to 3, and then finally it gets to 4. So the count variable, this loop control variable that's controlling the loop, it eventually becomes a value that makes the Boolean expression false, which stops the loop. So it's a variable that controls the loop. And so the next thing that we need to have is we need to have the loop control variable has to be tested to be true or false in the Boolean expression there. And it's a Boolean expression of the while statement. So just like we had an if statement, this is a while statement. And so what this here is, and we're going to go LCV, loop control variable. And this in this line of code, it is tested. And so what happens is it gets tested against another number or another amount, and to see if this Boolean expression is true or false. That's a very important part of the program. The third thing that's very important is that the loop control variable has to be updated. So if you remember, the loop control variable right here, it kept getting higher and higher until it got to 4, which stopped the loop. Think about what would happen if it didn't get higher. What if it just stayed at 1 the whole time? Well, it would never stop the loop. The loop would go on forever, and you don't want an infinite loop. So this right here is where the loop control variable is updated. You might say altered or whatever. We're going to use the term updated most of the time. It gets updated and it gets incremented, we say. It gets incremented by 1. The other part of the loop is, of course, the curly brace and the ending curly brace, which says end of loop, go back to while. And so these curly braces act as boundaries for what we call the, we could put it like this. Let's see, where did it go? We could call this right here. They are boundaries for what we'll call the body, the loop body, or the body of the loop. The body of the loop is where this contains the lines of code that will be repeated. So only these 2 lines are going to be repeated over and over again until the loop stops. So this print statement, oh, I forgot to put that in here. The print statement is going to say done after it's gone through the loop. So hello, 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 the loop's done, and now it prints the word done which is not in the loop body. Alright, so there we go. And then other definite while loop terms, the loop body, which we just said, between the curly braces contains a block of code or statements that will be repeated. To jump into the loop is what you do when the Boolean expression is true, and to kick out of the loop is when the Boolean expression is false, which you've actually already talked about. Now there's some important things that we want you to add to your notes. So find a place somewhere to write this. But these three things need to be written. If you're asked to write a program and you know it's going to contain loops, it's going to have stuff that needs to be repeated, the first thing you got to do is type the code. Type the code without loops. So that's the first thing. If you worry about loops and then what the code should be at the same time as a beginner, that's going to be really complicated. The next thing is, once you've typed it or done the code and the program is running, it actually is, you can compile it, run it, and it runs one time. For instance, like when we played the dice game thing. So you rolled the dice and the computer rolled the dice, and then you tried to figure out if you matched or not. And so the problem is, once you played it once, you were done and you had to go click on run again to play it again. We're going to write code that allows you to keep on playing it. So the next thing is, you've got to look at your code and ask what lines need to be repeated. This is critical. I have helped students who are having trouble figuring out where to add their code. I go, okay, well, what lines need to be repeated? And then they tell me what lines need to be repeated. After they get that, they're fine. So it's a very, very important question. And then what you do, now you add the loop parts to the code accordingly. So you make sure that you add your loop control variable. And why did it do that? And then you have to make sure that you have the while statement with the loop control variable being tested, and then you got to make sure that the loop control variable is updated. And then of course you want to have your boundaries, your curly braces around the loop body. So those are things you add, and then your code should run fine. Okay, now what we did in class is we practiced some stuff in JGrasp. And so what you should do is, there's the while loop intro in today's module, and that can be uploaded or downloaded and put into JGrasp, and then you'll want to save it to your Chapter 6 folder. Now, by the way, if you haven't done this before, in JGrasp, what you want to do is navigate to your Chapter 6 folder, in the left pane. So JGrasp files will want to save there by default for Chapter 6. And so what we mean by that is, you click on this up button right here, and then you'll see all of your chapters. And then you go to Chapter 6, and this is where you want to leave it, so that you'll save your files in Chapter 6. Alright, so then you should have this open, and then we're going to do some things. So what you might want to do is try things, pause the video and then try something and then see how you did, or you can just watch. It's up to you. And so in here, what we want to do is compile and run it. And so we are going to compile here and then run it, and see that it actually does print 3 hellos and then done, just like we traced it. The next thing that we need to do is we want to try to print 4 hellos without changing any numbers. So right now it's printing 3. We want to make it print 4 without changing any numbers. So you can't change this or this here. So if you want to try it, here's basically what happens if you type an equal sign here. Now the loop will go through when count is 1, and then it gets changed to 2, it'll go through again, it gets changed to 3, it'll go again, and then it'll get changed to 4, and then it'll go again. That'll be 4 hellos. When it gets changed to 5, it'll stop the loop. So anyway, so you can just change that. The other thing you can do, some people will go in here and they'll change, they'll keep this off, and to make it go one more, they'll just change this number. So it has to get to 5. So it'll go through 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then on 5 it will stop the loop. So those are different ways. Now what we want to do next is, now by the way, you should be able to look at this initialization of the loop control variable and the loop control variable here being tested, and you should be able to figure out just by looking at these 2 lines of code how many times the loop is going to be executed. The next thing that we want to do is we want to try to make it print 4 hellos by changing numbers and anything else that's necessary. So make it print 4 hellos but change your number, one of the numbers. So if I were to change this, well, let's see, I think it was well, let's leave it here. So if you change it, let's say you change this to 0, that's fine, but okay, so then you're going to count. 0 is 1, 1 is 2, 2 is 3, 3 is 4. So it's going to stop at 4. So you could go like this and say is less than 4. So it'll go through the loop at 0, at 1, at 2, at 3. That's 4 of them, and then on 4 it'll stop. So I mean, you can what's going to influence how many times the loop iterates is by this number right here and this number right here, and whether you have less than or equal to or less than, essentially. Or it could go the other direction, but most of the time we're doing this now. So all these 3 things, these are going to play a role in how many times the loop is going to iterate. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to change LCV, the the loop control variable. Oh boy, I can't even do it. Okay, we want to change the loop control variable to count plus plus. So just so that you know that count plus plus is another way to add 1 to a variable. So basically what this means is this plus plus means, okay, let's increment or add 1 to the count variable. If you typed in num of cats plus plus, that means add 1 to the number of cats, or the num of cats variable. So if we were to compile it and run it, it's still going to print the 4 hellos. The next thing that we did is we want it to make it so it prints hello 1, hello 2, hello 3, hello 4, and then done. Alright, so how would you change the code to make it do that? So if you want to try that and then come back, you can do that. Otherwise, you just watch. Basically what's happening is you want it to print a 1 the first time through the loop, a 2 the next time, and a 3 the next time. Well, there's a variable that's going to change by 1 each time, and of course that's the count variable. So if we take hello, put a space, and concatenate with the variable count, then the first time through the loop, actually what we want to do is start with 1 and then go to, let's say, less than or equal to. Alright, so count is 1, so the first time it'll go hello 1, then right here it gets updated to 2, and then so it's going to say hello 2, etc., etc. So that's how it's going to work. And so we're just going to compile it here and run it, and you'll see how that actually works. The next thing we did is we move the print statement inside the loop. And so if you were to put the loops this in here, let's go like this inside the loop. Well, if you think about it, what's that going to do? Well, that's just going to print done every time. So you're going to print done along with the rest of your program, which is not going to really make sense. So you really have to be careful what lines of code go in to the loop body and what kind don't. And so let's see if I can get this to work. So we're going to put this back out. Alright, then the next thing that we want to do is we want to print 500 hellos. So think about that. Try it yourself maybe. To print 500 hellos, you basically want to go 500 right here. So it's going to print at 1 and then all the way through 500. And so what's going to happen is when we run it, you can see how it started clear up here at 1 and goes all the way through and prints 500. Now if somebody's using just a less than and they ran it, then what's going to happen is it's only going to print 499. So if you move this up to 501, now it'll work to print 500. So you have to understand how that works. Alright, and that's it for the intro to while loops.